And we have a responsibility to always give our troops a clear mission, the support they need to get the job done, and a plan for what comes after. I insisted, for example, that our surge of forces in Afghanistan be matched with a transition to ensure Afghans took responsibility for their own security. In Libya, we were right to launch an air campaign to prevent Gaddafi from massacring innocent civilians, but we didn't do enough to plan for the day after, when deep-rooted tribalism plunged Libya into disorder. In Syria, the suffering in the civil war has been heartbreaking. To see a nation shattered and hundreds of thousands killed and millions driven from their homes, it is gut-wrenching. And as a father, I look at Syria's children and I see my own. That's why we've said the dictator Assad must go, and why we support a moderate Syrian opposition. And it's why America provides more humanitarian aid to the Syrian people than any other nation. But suggestions for deeper U.S. military involvement in a conflict like the Syrian civil war have to be fully thought through, rigorously examined with an honest assessment of the risks and trade-offs. How will it alter the conflict? What comes next? When we ask those questions, we prevent the kind of mission creep that history teaches us to avoid. If Iran and Russia want to spill their blood and treasure trying to prop up their Syrian client and get sucked into a quagmire, that is their choice. As President of the United States, I've made a different choice. And the only real solution to the Syrian conflict is a political solution, including a transition away from Assad. And that takes diplomacy. Not American soldiers being dragged into the middle of another civil war in the Middle East. Our foreign policy has to be strong, but it also has to be smart. Which brings me to my last lesson that I want to share. As powerful as our military is, we have to remember that many of the threats to our security cannot be solved by military force alone. We've got to draw on every tool, all elements of our national power. When we invest in the development that promotes education and opportunity around the globe, it can make conflicts and military interventions less likely later. So if you want to support our military, you also have to be in favor of foreign assistance that helps some young person learn in a very poor country, because it may end up making it less necessary to send our sons and daughters somewhere to fight. You can't separate the two. When we encourage economic and political reforms, when citizens, especially young people in other countries, have jobs and can choose their own leaders and have their human rights and dignity upheld, that can help reduce the appeal of violent extremism. We now have hope of averting the worst effects of climate change and the instability that would threaten our national security, because American leadership helped rally the world and forge the most ambitious agreement in history to fight climate change. So if we're going to seize the possibilities of our time, we have to use all these tools, and we have to have the courage to chart new paths. Because we negotiated with Iran and enforced strong sanctions, we reached a deal that prevents Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb, and we did it without firing a shot, with diplomacy, not war. We put aside 50 years of failed policies, and now we're seeing Americans returning to Cuba and the Cuban people looking to us and having new hope for the future. 4 decades after the conflict between us, Vietnam and America are forging a new partnership, showing the world that peace is better than war. And perhaps no element of our power is more enduring than the example that we set ourselves, the values we live as a nation and as individuals. That's how we won the Cold War, not just with the strength of our arms, but with the power of our ideas, the power of our example. It's how we defend our nation, including our refusal to torture, because America doesn't just insist that other countries respect human rights, we have to uphold them as well and lead the way.